The last delivery. The town of Ravenswood was small, quiet, and mostly uneventful, except for the strange house on the hill. Rumors surrounded the place. Some said it was haunted. Others believed something darker lurked within. No one had dared to go near it for years. It stood at the end of a long, twisted road, its dark windows staring out like hollow eyes, seemingly waiting. Jake had heard all the rumors, but as a college student working part-time as a pizza delivery driver, he wasn't too concerned. His shift that night had been routine until he received the last order. 1 large pepperoni to 201 Hollowbrook Lane. His heart skipped a beat. That was the address of the house. The other employees exchanged uneasy glances. "Are you sure about this, man?" His co-worker, Sarah, asked, her voice low. Jake shrugged. "It's probably just some prank or an old man who's too lazy to cook." He forced a laugh to ease his own nerves. But as he drove through the winding streets, the familiar parts of the town slowly disappeared. The lights of the homes grew sparse, and the trees seemed to stretch higher, their shadows twisting unnaturally in the dim glow of his car's headlights. The GPS announced that he had arrived. The house loomed before him. From a distance, it looked as though it had been abandoned for years. The paint was peeling, ivy crawled up its walls, and the windows were dusty and cracked. The porch sagged under the weight of time. Jake hesitated, but duty called. He grabbed the pizza, stepped out of his car, and walked up the creaky wooden steps. He knocked on the door, the sound echoing far louder than it should have in the silence of the night. For a long moment, there was nothing but the whisper of wind through the trees. Then, the door creaked open on its own. Jake's hand tightened around the pizza box. "Hello? I've got your order," he called out, his voice barely louder than a whisper. There was no answer. He stepped forward, pushing the door wider with a gentle nudge. The air inside was cold, unnaturally so, and it smelled faintly of mold and decay. But there was something else, too, a metallic scent, like rust. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight, and the shadows seemed to shift as he moved deeper into the house. "I'm just gonna leave this here," he said, setting the pizza down on a small table by the entrance. As he turned to leave, a voice whispered from the darkness, "Stay." Jake froze. His pulse raced, and his breath hitched in his throat. "Who's there?" The voice came again, closer this time. "Don't go. You're too late." Panic surged through him. He turned and bolted toward the door, but it slammed shut before he could reach it. His hand fumbled with the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The room around him seemed to grow darker, the air heavier. From the corner of his eye, he saw a figure move, a tall, shadowy silhouette emerging from the depths of the house. Its face was obscured, but its eyes glowed faintly, 2 pinpricks of light in the dark. Jake backed away, his hands shaking. "I'm just the delivery guy. I didn't mean to intrude." The figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised a hand, and the temperature in the room plummeted. Frost began to form on the windows, and Jake's breath came out in visible puffs. Suddenly, the room filled with the sound of scratching, like nails on wood. Jake turned toward the noise and saw the walls beginning to move. The wallpaper peeled away, revealing grotesque carvings beneath. Figures contorted in agony, faces twisted in fear. The voice whispered again, this time from all around him, "You should have never come here." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. Desperation clawed at his mind. He had to find another way out. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. Then he saw it. A door at the end of the hallway, barely visible in the dim light. Without thinking, he ran toward it, his footsteps echoing through the house. The walls seemed to pulse as he passed, and the floor felt as though it were shifting beneath him. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. He reached the door and threw it open, only to find himself standing in the very same room he had just left. The pizza was still on the table, untouched. Jake's stomach churned with dread. He was trapped. No matter where he went, the house twisted and turned, leading him back to the beginning. Suddenly the figure reappeared, standing directly in front of him. Its face was now clear, pale and skeletal, with empty eye sockets and a wide, unnatural grin. In its hand, it held a piece of paper, stained with something dark. The figure extended the paper toward him. With trembling hands, Jake took it. The paper was an old, faded delivery receipt. His name was written at the top, but beneath it, in red ink, were the words, "Delivered. You are now part of the order." Before Jake could react, the figure lunged at him. The world went black. The next morning, the pizza place received a call. "We never got our order," a deep voice on the line said. It was for 201 Hollowbrook Lane. But Jake never returned. The car was found abandoned, the pizza still inside. And the house? It stood silent, waiting for the next delivery. Jake had disappeared into the house, but the local authorities didn't consider it a mystery at first. To them, it was just another case of a young man skipping town. Yet Sarah, his co-worker, couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Days turned into weeks, and no one heard from Jake. Sarah decided to investigate. She drove up to 201 Hollowbrook Lane one evening, the same eerie path winding up through the dense forest. She parked in the exact spot Jake's car had been found. But now there were no signs of his disappearance. No caution tape, no evidence markers. It was as if the world had forgotten him. Sarah stood at the bottom of the porch steps, feeling the same unease that Jake must have felt. The house looked different now, though. The windows, once cracked, appeared intact, and the porch no longer sagged under the weight of time. It almost seemed new. Summoning her courage, Sarah knocked on the door. There was no answer. She knocked again, harder this time, and just as Jake had experienced, the door slowly creaked open by itself. Inside, the air was thick with an oppressive silence. Sarah could see her breath in front of her, though it wasn't cold outside. She stepped inside, calling out Jake's name, but the house swallowed her words, offering no echo in return. As she explored the first floor, her heart raced. The eerie quiet was suffocating, and shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally along the walls. Suddenly she stumbled upon something strange, a pizza box on the floor, untouched. Her pulse quickened as she picked it up. It was Jake's last delivery. Without warning, the lights flickered. Sarah heard footsteps behind her, soft but deliberate, like someone was walking with bare feet. She spun around, but there was nothing, only a long hallway leading deeper into the house. Yet she could feel eyes watching her. Panicked, Sarah decided to leave. She ran for the front door, but it slammed shut before she could reach it, just like Jake had experienced. Desperation took over, and she pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't move. The house wouldn't let her go. The same voice Jake had heard now echoed through the walls.